Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So we start today with chapter 5, Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness, Bhagavad-Gita, text 22. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Ye hi saṁsparśa-jā bhogā duḥkha-yonaya evate ādy-antavantaḥ kaunteya na teṣu ramate budhaḥ ye hi saṁsparśa-jā bhogā duḥkha-yonaya evate ādy-antavantaḥ kaunteya na teṣu ramate budhaḥ ye hi saṁsparśa-jā bhogā duḥkha-yonaya evate ādy-antavantaḥ kaunteya na teṣu ramate budhaḥ ye hi saṁsparśa-jā bhogā duḥkha-yonaya evate ādy-antavantaḥ kaunteya na teṣu ramate budhaḥ ye hi saṁsparśa-jā bhogā duḥkha-yonaya evate ādy-antavantaḥ kaunteya na teṣu ramate budhaḥ ye hi saṁsparśa-jā bhogā duḥkha-yonaya evate ādy-antavantaḥ kaunteya na teṣu ramate budhaḥ ye hi saṁsparśa-jā bhogā duḥkha-yonaya evate ādy-antavantaḥ kaunteya na teṣu ramate budhaḥ ye hi saṁsparśa-jā bhogā duḥkha-yonaya evate ādy-antavantaḥ kaunteya na teṣu ramate budhaḥ ye those he certainly saṁsparśa-jāḥ by contact with the material senses bhogāḥ enjoyment duḥkha distress yonayaḥ, sources of, eva, certainly, they are, ādi, in the beginning, ādy-antavantaḥ, subject to, kaunteya, O son of Kuntī, na, never, teṣu, in those, ramate, take delight, budhaḥ, the intelligent. Translation. An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery, which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kuntī, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Material sense pleasures are due to the contact of the material senses, which are all temporary because the body itself is temporary. A liberated soul is not interested in anything which is temporary. Knowing well the joys of transcendental pleasures, how can a liberated soul agree to enjoy false pleasures? In the Padma Purāṇa, it is stated, ramate yogino nante satyananda-chidatmani iti ramapada padenasau param brahma vidhiyate. The mystics derive unlimited transcendental pleasures from the absolute truth, and therefore the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, is also known as Rama. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is also said, Nayam deho dehabhajam riloke kashtan kaman arhati vidbujam ye tapo divyam putrakayena sattvam shuddhyedyasmad brahma saukyam tvanantam. My dear sons, there is no reason to labor very hard for sense pleasures while in this human form of life. Such pleasures are available to the stool eaters, hogs. Rather, you should undergo penances in this life by which your existence will be purified. And as a result, you will be able to enjoy unlimited transcendental bliss. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, Text 1. Therefore, those who are true yogis or learned transcendentalists are not attracted by sense pleasures, which are the cause of continuous material existence. The more one is addicted to material pleasures, the more he is entrapped by material miseries. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti-vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Paramananda Madhava. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadandikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्ता राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So today we're going to talk on chapter 5, text 22. The chapter is Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. This chapter is actually the practical application of Krishna consciousness. So before we start reading Bhagavad-Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam or speaking anything, we always invoke and give respects to our previous acharyas and to the Lord and to the Vaishnavas, because being unqualified, we really have nothing new to say, nothing from our own mental speculation, but we only repeat what is given by Lord Krishna and our previous acharyas like a parrot. So we'll be speaking only what Srila Prabhupada has spoken in Bhagavad-Gita and various lectures, just like a conveyor belt, so to say. So I'm just the mouthpiece and we'll just be speaking. So I would like to offer my respects to all the Vaishnava devotees here in the classroom and all my seniors. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity to speak and remember the words of Lord Shri Krishna from the Bhagavad-Gita. So again, to repeat the verse, so we remember what we are supposed to be talking about. Yehi saṁsparśa-jā bhogā duḥkha-yonaya evate ādy-antavantaḥ kaunteya teṣu ramate budhaḥ. An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery, which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kuntī, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man do not delight in them. So, of course, we know whatever is material has a beginning and an end. We have birth, we have death, we have a beginning and an end, and whatever has a beginning will definitely have an end. So if it has an end, it's temporary, it's not eternal, it's not nitya. In contrast, spiritual existence is nitya, it doesn't have a beginning or end. Lord Shri Krishna has an appearance which appears to be a birth for execution of different pastimes. But actually, Lord Krishna and all of us, spiritual souls, are all eternal. We don't have a beginning and we don't have an end. So the pleasures in this material world are temporary because they have a beginning and they have an end. Whereas this happiness in the spiritual world, there was never a beginning and there's no end to the happiness. It's always there. And it's our eternal constitution to be happy. So here in this verse also, Srila Prabhupada explains how we are trying to find happiness through sense pleasures, through saṁsparśa. Saṁsparśa means with the contact of the sense and the sense objects. So here, there are, in the Shastras it is explained, we have actually 11 senses. We have the 5 jnanendriyas, which are the senses, the knowledge, senses which we can obtain knowledge through. And then we have the karmendriyas, which are the senses with action. And then we have, of course, the mind. So the 5 jnanendriyas are rasanendriya, that's the taste, that's the sense organ of the tongue, and that's actually represented by apamahabhuta, that's the water element. Then we have the rupendriya, which is the eyesight, which is the senses we gain knowledge through sight. And that is represented by Agni Mahabhuta, with fire, because we can't see without light. And then we have the Granendriya, which is the nose. We gain knowledge of and understand things through our sense of smell, again represented by Prithvi Mahabhuta, with the earth. And we have Shravanendriya, that is the hearing sensation. We can gain knowledge again through our hearing. And that is represented by the Akasha, or ether, sky Mahabhuta. And then we have the sense of touch. So we have Sparshanendriya, and that is represented by Vayu Mahabhuta, or the air element. So we are all trying in this material world to get pleasures through these external senses. And again, they're limited because they have a beginning. As soon as we see something, there's a beginning, and then the object leaves, and that is the end of that perception. Likewise, we have the taste. You know, we may taste a nice rasgulla. Many of us like rasgulla, sweet sensation. Not all of us do, but many of us. So again, we enjoy that rasgulla, that sweet taste, for a certain amount of time. And as soon as it's gone, we wash our mouth, we digest it, that taste is also gone. So there's only a limited time where we can enjoy these sense pleasures through our senses. And then of course we have the karmendriyas, which are working senses, which are the pani, pada, vak, payu, upasta. Vak is the speech. So we are trying to gain pleasures through our speech, the working actions of speech. You know, speaking nice, flowery language, or through our feet. By walking, going different places. A lot of us like to go on vacation or visit beautiful places, nice places. And we have our hands, which are the working senses, and then we have the anus and the genitals. So we can acquire different pleasures through all these karmendriyas as well. And then of course we have the mind, which is the king of all the senses. And it actually, you know, tries to engage the other senses, the karmendriyas and the jnanendriyas. So in this material world, we are trying to gain pleasures, not really through ourself, but we're trying to gain pleasures through these external senses, and trying to get happiness from them. But because they're temporary, they are not giving us unlimited happiness. So actually in the next verse, Krishna gives a formula how to get eternal bliss. And you know, just like when we study math or science, there are so many problems that we need to solve. And if we know the simple formula, A plus B equals C, we can just plug in the numbers and we get the solution. So in the same way, Lord Krishna so nicely gives us the formula, how we can get happiness. Because Srila Prabhupada, a lot of times he explains, many places, the nature of the soul is ananda mayo bhyasat. The nature of the soul is to want to be happy. And that's why we're always searching for happiness, because we want to be happy. It's our eternal constitution, actually, it's our eternal right, because that's our nature, to be happy. So if we're not happy, then we're in distress looking for that happiness. So Lord Krishna here in the next verse actually gives us the formula how to get happiness. And that is experienced by the yogis. A yogi is one who is happy in this world. So the formula to get happiness is simple. It's just, again, A plus B equals C. A would be tolerating the urges of the material senses. And B, check the force of desire and anger. And that would be equal to being a yogi. So a yogi is one who can tolerate the urges of material senses and check the forces of desire and anger. And then automatically you are in happiness within this lifetime, actually, as explained to Krishna. You don't even have to wait till the next birth. But how do we do this? How do we check the force of desire and anger? How do we tolerate the urges of the material senses? Of course, Srila Prabhupada further quotes Srila Rupa Goswami in Upadeshamrit, the Nectar of Instruction, which he so nicely gives in the first verse. Vacho vegam manasa krodha vegam jivva vegam udarapasta vegam etan vegam yo vishaheta dhiraha sarvam api man prithivim sashishyat. A sober person who can tolerate the urges to speak the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals, is qualified to make disciples all over the world. He is a yogi. He's able to do this, and he is happy, he's joyful. Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma, na sochati na kanchati. A devotee who is on the Brahma Bhuta platform, he's always joyful. But again, how do we do this? How can we attain to that platform? How can we do this? Even Arjuna says in the Bhagavad-Gita, controlling the mind is even harder than controlling the wind. So I know, like, at least even in the material world, none of the living beings, we can control the wind. So how can we control the mind? And again, it's very simple formula, and Srila Prabhupada explains so sweetly. Further on, we can go a little further, and Srila Prabhupada explains with the same verse in Los Angeles, February 8, 1969. He says, yes, material pleasure is circumstantial in contact with the body. So again, we only get happiness, this temporary material happiness, in relation to the body. So that's something that we understand. It's not ourselves, it's not our eternal happiness. It's with this temporary body. Similarly, material distress as well. Prahlad Maharaj explains that just as we don't have to try to get happiness, we also don't try to get distress. It comes automatically. So those who are Atma Rama, enjoying in the platform of the soul, they are not concerned with this external pleasure and pain. Yes. So the Atma Rama, the devotees, they are taking the pleasure with the soul, the eternal self, not the temporary circumstantial pleasure, external pleasures. Furthermore, Srila Prabhupada talks again on this verse in New York, August 31st, 1966. So this was actually even before. And this was way back in the very beginning. Srila Prabhupada explains, happiness which is derived by touch senses, saṁsparśa-jā. So touch senses, the sense organs, in relation to the sense objects. Saṁsparśa-jā means happiness, so-called happiness derived from touch senses. Yehi saṁsparśa-jā bhogāḥ, enjoyment. Duḥkha-yonaya evate. Lord Krishna says that this is not real happiness. Again, it's only limited to the senses. Any happiness derived out of touch sensation, that is not real happiness. Rather, it is the gate for various miseries. The whole Vedic scriptures describe that happiness derived of sense perception out of the body. That is not real happiness. If we are to enjoy real pleasure, then we have to transcend these bodily pleasures. Happiness is there because I am a spirit soul. Actually, I am full of pleasure. So that's our actual natural constitution. We are full of pleasure. We don't have to go out looking for the pleasure. Happiness is there because I am a spirit soul. Actually, I'm full of pleasure, but because my sense of happiness is being manifested through matter, material matter, therefore we are being frustrated in deriving the real pleasure. So we're being distracted from our real pleasure and distracted to try to get pleasure through matter, which is temporary. So those who are in the advanced stage of spiritual life, they are called yogis. Yoginaha ramante yoginaha anante. Those who are spiritualists, they also enjoy. So it's not like the spiritualists don't enjoy. You have to be serious and not enjoy anything. The spiritualists also enjoy, but they enjoy in the real happiness which has no end. Any happiness which is ended at a certain point, that is not happiness. That is rather a source of distress, because temporary happiness means once this happiness is over, the distress is going to be coming on. So ādy-antavantaḥ kaunteya na teṣu ramate budhaḥ. Budhaḥ means one who is learned. A learned person does not enjoy such flickering or transient happiness, which is derived by sense touching. So the spiritualist and an intelligent person does not want to invest their time in trying to get so-called temporary happiness. They want to go for the eternal happiness which doesn't end. So that's a very important point. And we also go forth, Srila Prabhupada again, Arjuna is saying, how do we do that? How do we come to this Krishna consciousness? How can we control the mind when it's even harder to control the wind? The mind more than the wind. So Srila Prabhupada again says really nicely, there's a very nice quote that he gives from the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhyama Lila, chapter 22, text 31. Krishna Surya Sama Maya Haya Andakara Yaha Krishna Taha Nahi Mayara Adhikara. Krishna is like the sun, and Maya is darkness. When Krishna is present in the mind, there is no question of mind being agitated by Maya's influence. In the BTG, Prabhupada's first publication, we see he keeps that quote right there on the first page in the beginning of the BTG, of the Bhagavad-Darshan, Back to Godhead. He says, Krishna is light and Maya is nescience. Wherever there's Krishna, there's no chance of nescience or Maya. So as devotees or as spiritualists or people on the path of spiritual life, we don't go into a dark room and say, how can we take away this darkness? Please, darkness, go away. What do we do to take away this darkness? All we have to do is add the light. Once you turn the light switch on, the darkness automatically goes. So there is no frustration in worrying up how to get rid of the darkness. By natural contact with Krishna, automatically the Maya and the nescience goes. So there's no art, like in the artificial yogic process of trying to negate thought. That's not our process. Our process is just try to add Krishna. And it becomes as easy as crossing water in a calf's hoof print. So easy, you just have to step over it. You don't even have to jump. So we use the formula, again, as Krishna says. 1, tolerate the urges of the material senses, plus checking the force of anger and desire, and then you come to the becoming a yogi and entering into your constitutional position of happiness. Now, again, so all we have to do is add Krishna. So like in the beginning, we talked about the 11 senses, the 5 jnanendriyas, the knowledge acquiring senses, the 5 karmendriyas, the 5 action senses, and the mind. So instead of trying to control them, because they're very difficult, they're very like wild horses, and they're very difficult to control, all you have to do is add Krishna, and it becomes spiritualized, and it's so simple. So, and we dovetail. Again, Srila Prabhupada gives a very nice quote, and a very nice example of using these senses and using our desires and anger and making them spiritual by dovetailing them. He gives the example for anger as if we use our anger in those who blaspheme the Lord, or blaspheme the devotees of the Lord. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gives the example of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the example of Jagai Madai. All of us know the story of Jagai Madai and how they blaspheme and try to hurt Nityananda Prabhu, who is an exalted devotee of the Lord. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came immediately on the spot and used his anger for those who were harming his dear devotee. And we have another example of Hanuman, who burned whole of Lanka with fire. So Hanuman didn't just say, okay, I have to control my anger, I can just meditate and sit here and let everything happen, it's everyone's karma, let me just close my eyes and control it. No, he didn't say that. He used these senses, he used his anger in the service of the Lord, and they became glorified, and then they became spiritualized. So we don't want to artificially suppress, but we just want to engage and add Krishna to everything. We have another quote by Srila Prabhupada. He says in the Purport, anger is controlled. So we see, and this is not only with anger, this is with all our different desires and sense objects, senses. Anger is controlled when we use it in the service of the Lord. So when we use all our senses, when we use all our desires, when you use all our actions and senses and mind, when we use those in the service of the Lord, not negating them artificially, but using them for the service of the Lord, then it is controlled naturally. So all we have to do is, again, to control them, we just have to add Krishna in our life, add Krishna in every aspect. So we have, again, the Panchendriya, the Pancha Jnanendriyas, Pancha Karmendriyas, the mind, and we add to everything. If we add the tongue, again, Bhakti-yoga Thakur so wonderfully explains how we engage the tongue. Sarira avidya jal jodendriya tahe kal jive phale visaya sagare. So the tongue is one of the most difficult organs to control. We love to eat different types of tastes, but Krishna bada dayamay kari bara jiva joy swaprasadana dilo bhai. The Lord is so merciful. He advents in his form as Krishna Prasadam, and we get to honor that Krishna Prasadam. So we do use the taste sensation, but instead of using it for any other type of food, we accept and we honor Krishna Prasad. And when we understand the presence of Krishna in that, again, that is serving Krishna. Seyanam Rita Pao Radha Krishna Guna Gao Preme Dako Shri Chaitanya Nitai. So while we're enjoying and we're engaging in honoring Krishna Prasadam, we chant the names, lovingly chant the names of Radha and Krishna and Gauranitai. So again, it becomes a very loving and wonderful process. So again, we engage our belly, we engage our other senses. Wonderful example is Maharaj Ambarish, who engaged all his senses in the service of the Lord, smelling the tulsi leaves from the lotus feet of the Lord, tasting Krishna Prasadam, paying obeisances, using his head, using his feet, walking to the temple, and engaging everything in the service of the Lord, and therefore he perfected all of his senses. So again, he didn't just sit there and go to the forest and try to stop all his senses, but he engaged them, and therefore they became controlled in that way. Again, those are the engaging the senses, and how do you engage your mind? We have also the Navavida process of bhakti, the 9 process of bhakti, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, right? So Smaranam, can anyone tell me, does anyone remember who is the embodiment, which devotee is the embodiment of the Smaranam? Can anyone remember? Prahlad Maharaj, yes. So Prahlad Maharaj, he was thinking of Krishna, of Lord Nrsimhadev everywhere. And because of that love, he saw him everywhere. He even saw him in a pillar, he saw him in everyone, he saw him in every being and everything. And Srila Prabhupada explains this is a quality of love. When you're so in love with someone, again, it's not forcefully, okay, we have to think of Krishna. Look at there and think of Krishna. Look over there and think of Krishna. But if you naturally develop that love for anybody, you see them everywhere, you think of everybody. This person, oh, I came here to see this beautiful place. Oh, the person who I love would love this place or would love to eat this. So in the same way, when a devotee develops love for Krishna, he doesn't have to forcefully think of Krishna. Automatically, he has so much love for Krishna, he sees him everywhere, and in everything, and in everyone, and in relation to everything. So Prahlad Maharaj, because he was so overflowing with love for Krishna, he just saw Krishna in everything, and he wanted to share it with everyone because it was so enjoyable, it was so wonderful, and it was so overflowing, it was contagious. He had to just talk about Krishna and share it with his friends. And same thing with Srila Prabhupada. He was so overflowing with that love of Krishna that he couldn't help it. He just spread it to everyone in their hearts, and even after entering Samadhi, still spreading. It was so deep and so vast, and so, again, unlimited and eternal. It's not limited. So this is the way how we can control our mind and control our senses. Again, and come to that place of eternal happiness. We don't have to really look for that happiness. We just add Krishna, and then we can be in relation to that eternal happiness. So, again, Srila Prabhupada talks about, in Los Angeles in February, he talks about controlling these urges is the perfection of the yogic practice. So a real yogi, he has the ability to be have happiness within this life. So our objective is to come to that platform. And the yogic practice means to be tolerant. So all these different yogic practices are meant to bring us to the platform of tolerance. So again, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches us, Trinadapi sunicherna tarorapi sahishuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. So one can chant the holy names of the Lord constantly. Again, the Lord comes in his form of the holy name. So we're actually associating with Krishna when we chant his holy name. And we can do it constantly if we are in the humble state of mind, feeling ourselves lower than the blade of grass and more tolerant than the tree. So what is a tree? Tree, it withstands the cold. It doesn't have a sweater, and it doesn't need any warmth. It doesn't have any warmth in the winter. It just stands there without complaining. In the summer, it still stands there. We may hit it, we may chop it, it still gives out their shade and is still standing there tolerantly. So all these yoga processes in the days before, the yogis, in the winter, they used to actually submerge themselves in the cold water during the winter. So I know even the winters in Vrindavan, can you imagine it's hard even just to take a cold shower. I know there's many of you that still take cold showers in the winter, but it's very difficult, just the 2-minute shower, cold shower. But these yogis would actually submerge themselves all day and maybe all night in the water during the winter. And in the summer, the scorching hot summer, even the fan is not enough nowadays in Vrindavan. We need the AC. And that sometimes, has to be a very high AC. But the yogis, they used to actually surround themselves, not only just exposing themselves to the elements, but actually surrounding themselves with scorching flames. And all these processes, Srila Prabhupada explains, was to teach them tolerance, to be able to learn tolerance, and which is very important for bhakti. But we don't have to do all these things, Srila Prabhupada said. Of course, we need to get to that goal of tolerance, but we don't have to do all these other processes, yogic processes. All we have to do is chant and dance in front of Krishna and derive 1,000 times benefit than those practices. This is exact words of Srila Prabhupada. So we can get that tolerance level. All we have to do is to chant and dance in front of Krishna and gain those benefits. And it can be practiced by everyone, even children. So that's so wonderful about our Krishna conscious philosophy. And what Prabhupada is giving us, what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us, what our previous acharyas has given us, we don't have to do all these strenuous activities, but all we have to do is chant and dance in front of the Lord. And we can attain 1,000 times the benefit, according to Srila Prabhupada. So this is the universal self-realization process. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommends, Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama eva kevalam, Kalo nasteva, 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 gatiranyata. There is no other way, no other way, no other way for deliverance in this Kali Yuga than to chant the holy names of the Lord, to chant the holy names of the Lord, to chant the holy names of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada says, even if you have nothing, God gave you a tongue, God gave you some ears. Simply sit down and utilize them. Even if you can't utilize these, even if you can't utilize that, Prabhupada said, he's so compassionate, he's so soft-hearted. He said, even if you can't utilize those, simply sit down and let others chant. You hear, you get the benefit. Chant Hare Krishna. Prabhupada says, and again, this is, Prabhupada says right here, who can give you a more feasible program? It's like an advertising pitch, which is true. Who can give you a more feasible program than this, of self-realization than this? Srila Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommends the same thing, again, for the benefit of all. So simple. Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama eva kevalam. Kalo nasteva, 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 gatiranyata. This is the only way, and it's so simple. So we have to take the opportunity to do it. Srila Prabhupada says, and this is again quoted exact words of Srila Prabhupada, simply chant and you get the result. The method is very simple. So let's chant one time. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much.